I still remember the date clearly. January 18th, 2024. It was a Thursday morning, cold and sharp, the kind of Chicago winter air that makes the wooden porch creak under your slippers. I had spent the night at my small lakefront home in Fox Lane, Illinois, a place my late husband Richard and I bought back in 1992, long before our son married Melissa. At 5:12 a.m., my landline phone rang. Now, hardly anyone calls a landline anymore, not unless it's truly urgent. So when I heard it, my heart tightened, that small instinct older women develop after a lifetime of early morning emergencies. I answered on the second ring. Mrs. Ellis, this is Officer Kramer from the Fox Lake Security Patrol. I'm calling because, well, your daughter-in-law is at your front gate. She's with, movers. For a moment, I thought he must be mistaken. Melissa at my gate, before sunrise, with movers? Movers, I repeated, almost whispering it because my brain couldn't assemble the logic fast enough. Yes, ma'am, he continued. 3 men, a truck, and boxes. She says you're expecting them. Expecting them? At 5 in the morning? I wrapped my cardigan around myself tighter, as if that extra layer would protect me from the absurdity of what I was hearing. Do you want us to turn them away? He asked gently. I took a slow breath, a habit I formed after Richard passed in 2018, when I had to teach myself how to breathe again during shock. No, I said. Let them in. I want to see what she thinks she's doing. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from something heavier, something older, something I had felt building for months. Melissa had always been polite, not warm, polite, the type of politeness that feels like a well-trained performance. She married my son Michael in 2016, a neat ceremony in Lincoln Park, nothing extravagant, but I knew, even then, from the way she assessed the seating arrangements and commented on the cost of flowers, that she noticed everything related to ownership, to money, to control. Over the years, her comments grew bolder. You live alone, Mom. That house is way too big for one person. Michael worries about you being isolated out there. Wouldn't it be better if you move closer to us? Closer to them had always meant giving up the lake house Richard worked his whole life to buy. And Melissa, she had a way of saying things that felt less like suggestions and more like the early stages of a takeover. Still, 5:12 a.m. with movers felt like something beyond her typical behavior, something premeditated, something dangerous, something she believed she had the right to do. I walked to my kitchen window, the one that faced the long gravel driveway. The porch light illuminated the dust clouds from the moving truck as it rolled in. Melissa stepped out first, pristine as always, even in freezing winter. A long camel coat, boots that had never seen snow, hair pulled back tightly like she wanted no strand out of place. She opened her clipboard. Her clipboard! My jaw clenched. One of the movers walked toward her, asking something, and she pointed. Yes, actually pointed toward my house, as though giving instructions for unloading. I stood there for a moment, watching her as if I were watching a stranger break into a life she didn't own. A strange calm washed over me. Not anger, not fear. A calm understanding that Melissa had finally crossed the line she had been circling for years. She thought she had won something. She thought she had the advantage. But the truth she didn't know, and what would change everything, was that 2 months earlier, on November 3rd, 2023, I had made a decision she could never have predicted. I had changed the ownership structure of my home. And not even my son knew. The decision I made on November 3rd, 2023, wasn't impulsive. Nothing about aging alone is impulsive. You think, you count, you double-check. You ask yourself what is reasonable and what is necessary, especially when your only child has a spouse who sees your life as a pending real estate opportunity. On that day, I visited Lawrence and Bellman Attorneys, the same small law firm that handled Richard's retirement accounts back in 2007. I trusted them because they knew our history, the house, the mortgage we paid off, the way Richard left everything neat, organized, and debt-free. The lawyer, Amanda Bellman, greeted me with a soft smile. "She had a feeling you'd come in someday," she said. "You always were cautious." Cautious. That word stuck with me. Not fearful, not paranoid, just a woman who had seen enough winters to understand that people change. And Melissa. She had changed more quickly than I ever expected. I told Amanda everything. The subtle comments, the pressure to downsize, the sudden interest in my property taxes, the way Melissa always asked Michael how much the house was roughly worth on today's market. Amanda didn't react dramatically. She simply nodded like she had heard the story 100 times before. And maybe she had. Sons get married, wives get ambitious, and older mothers get cornered. "What exactly are you afraid of?" she asked. I looked down at my hands, veins visible, skin thinner than I remembered. "I'm afraid," I said slowly, "that one day I'll wake up and find decisions made for me, not by me." She leaned back in her chair. "And you want legal insulation." It wasn't a question. It was an accurate observation. "Yes," I said. "I want protection. Not against my son, against someone who thinks my home is part of her future earnings." Amanda opened a folder. "You need a revocable living trust," she said. I blinked. A trust? I had assumed changing the will was enough. "No," she replied. "Wills are for after death. Trusts protect you while you're alive." She slid a paper across the desk. "If the home is placed into a trust in your name only, no one, not your son, not his wife, can act like they own any part of it." My chest felt lighter. "And if someone tries?" I asked. Amanda smiled, but there was a sharpness in it. "Then they will run into legal consequences, because the trust becomes the owner. Not you, as a vulnerable senior, and definitely not them." That day, after 2 hours of signing documents, verifying IDs, and reviewing beneficiary instructions, my home at Fox Lake officially became the property of the Judith Ellis Living Trust, established 11/03/2023. Only my signature could move it. Only my decision could change anything. And crucially, Michael's name was removed completely at my request. It wasn't because I didn't trust my son. It was because I didn't trust his wife's influence. Amanda placed the final document in front of me. "This," she said, "is the fireproof layer between your life and someone else's greed." I went home that evening feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not power. No. Just peace. A peace built from preparation, not hope. So when Melissa arrived at my driveway on that frigid January morning, with movers and the confidence of someone who believed she owned my home, she had no idea she was walking into a plan I had already completed 2 months earlier. As I watched her barking orders at the movers, clipboard in hand, something clicked inside me. She wasn't here to ask. She was here to take. Her coat, her boots, her perfectly neat hair, they were all armor. Armor worn by someone who had convinced herself she had already won. She finally looked up at the window where I stood. Our eyes met. Her expression didn't shift. No guilt, no shame, only certainty. Certainty built on a foundation of lies she must have told herself and my son. I tightened the belt of my cardigan and walked to the door. My heartbeat was steady, like I was preparing for a conversation I had rehearsed in the back of my mind for years. When I opened the door, the wind cut through the space between us. "Judith," she said, voice cool, "we're here to help you transition. It's time." "Transition?" I echoed. "Yes," she said, unfazed. "Into assisted living." The movers stood behind her, waiting for instruction. It was 5:12 a.m., snowflakes drifted in the porch light, and Melissa stood on my doorstep, believing she had the right to move me out of a house I legally no longer owned. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. For a brief second, I thought maybe I had misheard her. Maybe the cold in the air warped her words. Maybe this was one of Melissa's dramatic exaggerations. But no, she stood there, chin lifted with rehearsed authority, waiting for me to accept her decision as though she were a doctor delivering test results. "Assisted living?" I repeated, softer this time, not because I was confused, but because I was stunned by how confidently she had walked into my life with a claim she couldn't legally make. "Yes, Judith," she continued, flipping through papers on her clipboard. "It's time. This place is old, the stairs are steep, and you're, well, not getting younger. We've already arranged things for you." Arranged things. Those words hung in the frozen air like a sharp icicle ready to break. Behind her, one of the movers cleared his throat. Uncomfortable. He knew, even without understanding anything, that something about this wasn't right. "Would you like us to start with the living room, ma'am?" he asked her. She didn't even look at me. "Yes," she said with a decisive nod. "Start with the antique pieces. They're fragile. Handle them with care." Antique pieces. She was referring to the furniture Richard and I chose together in 1994, after spending nearly our entire first year in this house patching walls, fixing piping, and staining the deck by hand. Antique pieces. Her vocabulary always revealed the truth before her actions did. I stepped forward, one hand on the wooden railing my husband built. "Melissa," I said quietly, "you need to stop." She gave me the kind of smile polite enemies give each other, the smile a chess player gives when they believe checkmate is only one move away. "I know this is overwhelming," she said, "but trust me, this is the best decision for everyone." Everyone. Everyone but me. "And Michael?" I asked. "Does he know you're here?" Her jaw tightened just a bit, subtle, but clear enough. "He wants what's best for you," she replied, which told me the exact opposite. If my son had approved of this, Melissa would have proudly said, "Yes, he sent me." She didn't. She hid behind a general statement because she knew Michael would never force me into assisted living. But she also knew he was too gentle, too soft-spoken, and too trusting to go against her. "Let's not make this harder," she said, her voice dipping into condescension. "You've lived here long enough. It's not safe, it's not practical, and quite frankly, you can't maintain this house anymore." The words stung, not because they were true, but because they were designed to remove my dignity under the mask of concern. This woman was not here to help me. She was here to seize something. And for the first time since the call that woke me, I felt the anger. Quiet, controlled, rooted in years of ignored warning signs. I stepped aside, allowing her to see the inside of my home. The framed photos on the entry table, the worn rug Richard and I bought in Colorado, the bookshelf he built when he retired. All the things that held a life.
Melissa didn't look at any of them. She looked past everything, scanning the space like a realtor showing a property to clients. "Do you have the paperwork?" she asked the mover behind her. He handed her a file folder. She took out a packet of documents, held together with a silver clip. "These," she said, "are the transfer papers. Michael and I will handle the legal side, but you need to sign the voluntary release. It's just a formality." She extended the papers toward me like a gift she expected me to be grateful for. A voluntary release of my own home. The house I bought with my husband. The house where I raised my son. The house where I mourned, rebuilt, and survived. For the first time that morning, I felt my heart beat loud in my ears. My voice was low, steady, and surprisingly calm. "I'm not signing anything." Melissa narrowed her eyes as though she believed I was merely being emotional, not final. "Judith, please don't make a scene. The truck is here. The paperwork is prepared. This is already done." Already done? The confidence she carried wasn't natural. It came from something she believed was legally binding. And that's when I realized she had forged something, or tricked someone, or convinced Michael to sign something he didn't understand. She wouldn't have come with movers unless she believed she had authority. That certainty only comes from one thing: a document, real or fake, that she thought put her in control. I took a slow breath, letting the winter air cool the fire building inside me. "What exactly did you bring?" I asked. She handed me the packet of documents. She said, "Proof." And with those 4 letters, Melissa stepped into a trap she didn't even know existed. Because while she brought forged or manipulated papers, I had something far more powerful: a legally established trust dated November 3rd, 2023, signed, notarized, and irreversible. A secret she never saw coming.
She held out the folder again, that polished confidence on her face. The confidence of someone who believed the world would bend simply because she asked it to. "Here," she said. "Just sign this and we'll take care of the rest." The folder was thick, too thick for something she claimed was just a formality. I took it, not because I intended to sign anything, but because I wanted to see what she believed she had over me. Inside were papers with bold headers: property transfer agreement, voluntary release of ownership, assisted living authorization. My eyebrows lifted slightly. Voluntary? I asked quietly. You arrive at 5 in the morning with movers, and you call this voluntary? Melissa crossed her arms. Judith, you're making this dramatic. You've needed help for a long time. Michael and I talked about this. We're trying to do what's best. I flipped through the pages, and then I saw it. A shaky, uneven signature. Supposedly mine. My stomach tightened. It wasn't my signature. Not even close. It slanted wrong. The loops were exaggerated. The J was nothing like I have written it since I was 13 years old. She forged it. Or someone forged it for her. I looked up at her slowly. Where did you get these? I asked. I had them prepared, she said without hesitation. You're overwhelmed, you forget things. We're stepping in. Overwhelmed. That word again. A tidy way of saying old enough to take advantage of. I took a deep breath. Melissa, I said, this signature is not mine. She didn't even flinch. Well, maybe you don't remember signing it. You've been very stressed lately. It happens at your age. The mover behind her shifted uncomfortably. He sensed what she had said crossed a line. My age, I repeated softly. Interesting, she continued. Michael and I are trying to help you before something happens. This house is too much. You can't live here alone anymore. You're right, I said, my voice even and controlled. You can't live here alone. She blinked, confused. What does that mean? It means, I said, closing the folder, this house isn't in my name anymore. Her face went pale. What? She said, voice cracking in the middle. I stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her chin up to look at me. 2 months ago, I said, holding her gaze, I transferred this home into a legal trust, a trust you have no access to, a trust you have no rights over. She blinked rapidly, her breath catching in the winter air. That's not possible, she said. You're lying. I handed her the folder back. You came here with forged papers. You broke into my morning with a moving truck, and you expected me to hand over something you thought I hadn't protected. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I watched her eyes flick over the movers, suddenly unsure, suddenly aware that she had acted too boldly, too fast, too illegally. You can't do this, she whispered. I already did, on November 3rd. For the first time, Melissa lost her composure. Her shoulders stiffened, her lips tightened, her eyes darted toward the house, then back to the driveway, calculating, panicking. Michael said, but I cut her off gently. No, I said. Michael didn't say anything. You told Michael something, and he believed you because he trusts people he loves. Her jaw clenched so hard, I could see the muscles twitch. Then she said the quietest confession, the one she didn't mean to reveal. He was supposed to support me. Ah, there it was. Not support us, not support you, support me, her. Her plan, her comfort, her access. The truth slipped out not because she wanted it to, but because fear had cracked her polished shell. You brought forged documents to my home, I said softly, and now you're frightened because you realize they mean nothing. The movers stood frozen. They weren't touching a single piece of furniture now. Melissa swallowed hard. "What do you want?" she asked, voice small for the first time. I gazed at her calmly. "I want you," I said, "to understand that I'm not as alone as you think, and not as unprotected as you hoped." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" she whispered. I stepped back into the doorway. "You'll find out. But first, you're going to leave my property." For a few seconds, Melissa didn't move. The winter air hung between us, still and heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. Her confidence had cracked, but not shattered. Women like Melissa never crumble all at once. They fracture slowly, and then they fight harder. "I'm not leaving," she said finally, her voice trembling not with fear but with indignation. "You're not thinking straight. You need help. This is for your own good." "That line," I said softly, "has been used on elderly women for centuries. But you know what's different today?" I waited a beat. "I'm not a woman you can bully." Her eyes hardened. "You're making this worse," she said. "If Michael were here—" "Michael isn't here," I said. "And that's because you didn't want him here." Her face twitched. I had hit the truth. I stepped inside and reached for my phone on the small entry table, the one with the scratched corner Richard always meant to sand down. "Who are you calling?" she demanded. I looked directly at her. "Your husband." Color drained from her cheeks. "You're not dragging him into this," she snapped. But I already had the phone ringing. 7:09 a.m. Michael usually woke around this time for work. He had a reliable routine, unlike Melissa. The call connected on the fourth ring. "Mom?" His voice sounded sleepy, confused. "Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath. "Michael," I said, "are you aware your wife is at my house right now with movers?" There was a long pause, a painful pause, a revealing pause. "What?" he finally whispered. "Your wife," I repeated, "arrived before sunrise with a truck. She has forged papers and is demanding I move into assisted living." I could hear the sound of sheets shifting, his feet hitting the floor. "She what?" He wasn't calm now. There was panic, there was shock, and there was a crack in the blind faith Melissa usually relied on. "Michael," I said, steady, "I need you to listen carefully." "I'm listening," he breathed. "I did not sign any documents. Your wife forged signatures. And she tried to remove me from my home. But legally, this house isn't in my name anymore." He exhaled sharply. "How? Mom, what?" "I placed it in a trust. 2 months ago." That was the moment he broke. Not angry at me, not defensive, but torn, realizing the woman he married had crossed a line he didn't see coming. He whispered, voice shaking, "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." I believed him. Michael had a softness that life hadn't beaten out of him yet. He trusted too easily. He forgave too quickly. Melissa preyed on those qualities the way some people prey on open windows. "Are you coming here?" I asked. "Yes," he said immediately. "I'm leaving now. Don't let her do anything. I'll be there in 30 minutes. When I hung up, Melissa was staring at me with cold fury. "You had no right," she hissed. "You had no right to break into my morning," I replied. "He's my husband," she snapped. "And I'm his mother," I answered, as calm as the frozen lake behind my house. "I've known him 34 years longer than you have. I won't let her isolate him from the truth." her lips pulled tight.
"You're going to regret this," she said. "I already regretted trusting you," I replied. This is correction." For a moment, she looked like she might say something else, but the movers shifted again, uncomfortable. One spoke gently. "Ma'am, maybe we should leave until your son gets here." Melissa spun toward him. "No, absolutely not. She's confused. This is her memory again." The mover held up both hands. "Look, lady, we're just here to move furniture, not get in the middle of a family fight. We're not touching anything until we know what's legal." I almost smiled. Melissa's jaw trembled with rage. "Fine," she spat. "Call your lawyer, call whoever you want, but when Michael gets here—" I cut her off gently. "When Michael gets here," I said, "your lies will stop." She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. "And Melissa," I added quietly, "you're not dealing with the woman you imagined. You're dealing with a woman who has prepared for this day." Silence. Thick. Sharp. Heavy. I stepped back inside and closed the door halfway, enough to block the wind, but not enough to block my hearing. Let her stew. Let her unravel. Let her realize she had stepped into a legal situation she could not manipulate. The real truth was about to break open, and she had no idea what was coming.
As I waited for Michael to arrive, I leaned against the hallway wall and closed my eyes for a moment. The sound of the movers murmuring outside, the winter wind scraping at the windows, it all felt strangely distant, like background noise to a truth I had quietly lived with for years. Sometimes a morning like this doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes from a long thread of small warnings. Warnings we convince ourselves to overlook. I thought back to the early signs, the ones I brushed off because I wanted harmony more than confrontation. The first sign came in the summer of 2020. Michael and Melissa had come over for a 4th of July cookout. The grill smoke drifted over the lake, and we were eating Richard's favorite potato salad recipe. Melissa had laughed, touching my arm lightly. "You know, Judith, you could sell this place and get a beautiful condo downtown. No more yard work, no more snow shoveling. It would be perfect for you." She had framed it as concern, but her eyes had wandered over the property line, over the lake view, over the improvements Richard made himself, evaluating, measuring. I remember shrugging it off then. I told myself she was being thoughtful. But now, that moment reappeared with clarity sharper than January air. The second sign came in May 2022. I had slipped on the back deck and twisted my ankle. Nothing major. But when Melissa heard it, she texted Michael, "She can't live alone anymore. She's going to get hurt. We need to intervene." Intervene, a word usually reserved for addiction or danger, not for a sprained ankle and a stubborn woman who refused to stop gardening. At the time, I chalked it up to worry. But now, it felt like a seed planted deliberately. The third sign came last year, in August 2023. Michael and Melissa had invited me to dinner. We were halfway through dessert when she casually asked, "So, Judith, Do you have an estate plan? Like, who handles things when you're, older? I smiled politely. I have everything arranged, I said. Melissa nodded, but something uneasy flickered in her eyes, like she expected a different answer, like she had applied for a job she didn't get. Thinking back on each moment now, every interaction formed a trail I had quietly walked through without noticing the signs glowing under my feet. And here she was, standing outside my house with movers. The final sign, the culmination of years of subtle manipulation. Still leaning against the wall, I opened my eyes and looked at the photo frame next to me. It was a picture from June 2015, the last summer before Michael married Melissa. He was smiling so wide my cheeks ached just looking at it. Richard had one arm around him, the lake behind us shimmering gold from the sunset. Michael loved this house. He loved what it represented. Family, safety, all the nights we spent playing cards and grilling burgers on the deck. Melissa never saw the house that way. To her, it wasn't a memory. It was an asset, a property, a future value, a stepping stone. Looking at that photo, a sadness settled in my chest, not for myself, but for my son. He had no idea the woman he married had built a private plan on the side, a plan that led her right to my doorstep today. I took a slow breath and steadied myself. I wasn't angry anymore, not even afraid, just disappointed that a woman could stare at my life, decades of joys, losses, struggles, rebuilding, and see nothing but square footage. Through the half-closed door, I heard Melissa pacing on the porch. She was talking to someone on the phone. Her voice was low but sharp, like a knife slicing through the cold air.
"No, I don't care what she said," she hissed. "She's confused. The papers are real. I'll get her to sign. Just stay ready." My eyes opened wider. "Ready for what?" someone on the other end asked, a muffled voice, probably one of the movers or a friend she dragged into this plan. Melissa lowered her voice further, but not enough. "For the transfer," she whispered. "This is our chance. Michael will understand later." There it was, a confession spoken in the irritation of being challenged. Not for Michael, not for me, for her. And in that moment, the last missing piece clicked together. Melissa wasn't here to help me transition. She was here to force me into a decision she had already scripted. A decision she expected to finalize before sunrise so she could present it to Michael as an irreversible fact. But she forgot one thing. People like Melissa plan with arrogance. People like me plan with wisdom. And she had walked right into a situation where my preparation was stronger than her entitlement. I straightened my shoulders. This wasn't just about a forged signature anymore. This was about protecting my son from a truth he was finally going to see for himself. A truth that was approaching fast. One set of footsteps at a time. Because
In less than 15 minutes, Michael would arrive, and nothing Melissa said or did could stop what was about to unfold.
The next few minutes felt strangely quiet, the kind of silence that comes before important moments. I stood in the hallway listening to the sound of Melissa pacing on the porch, her boots scraping the wood back and forth, each step sharper than the last. Outside, the movers stood awkwardly near the truck, exchanging glances. They were not young men, mid-40s, maybe 50s, men who understood morality just by watching body language. Men who had seen enough in life to recognize when something didn't feel right. The oldest mover finally approached my porch steps and spoke gently. "Ma'am, with respect, we don't want to touch anything unless everything is legal. We don't get involved in family matters." Melissa whipped around at him. Her patience was unraveling fast. "It is legal," she snapped. "I told you she already signed. She just doesn't remember. Just wait for my husband to get here." Her tone carried something brittle. Desperation, maybe? Or the realization that her plan was slipping through her fingers. I stepped closer to the door, but kept it half closed, listening. The mover shook his head. "Lady, I've been doing this for 22 years. I can tell when paperwork is clean and when something is off. This is off. We won't move a single thing until it's sorted." Melissa clenched her jaw. "You're overstepping," she said coldly. "No, we're protecting ourselves and her." He jerked his chin toward my house. Melissa's eyes sharpened with cold fury. "She doesn't need protection. I'm her family." The mover sighed. "Family doesn't show up at 5 in the morning to force someone out of their home." That hit her, square in the chest, because for the first time that morning, someone, besides me, saw through her. She turned away sharply, pulling out her phone again. I could hear her voice tightening, unraveling, losing its polished edge, piece by piece. "She's lying," she hissed to whoever she called. "She's pretending she never signed. I don't care. The house transfer needs to happen today. Do you hear me?" I frowned. Transfer? Who exactly did she think she was coordinating with at dawn on a weekday? She lowered her voice further, but not enough. "Yes, I know she put it in some trust, but it doesn't matter. There has to be a way to reverse it. Michael said—" She stopped. A silence. A long, telling silence. Then she whispered, "No, he doesn't know about this part yet." I felt the breath leave my body. That part? What part? A cold understanding ran through me. Melissa had a second plan. Something she hadn't shown yet. Something she hadn't told even Michael. Something hidden deeper than the forged papers. I stepped fully behind the door now, listening carefully. Her next sentence was quieter, but clear enough. "Look, once she's in assisted living, it'll be automatic. We'll just file the paperwork. Michael won't question it." Automatic. File the paperwork. My hands tightened around the doorknob. This wasn't a morning surprise. This was a long-term scheme she had been building behind everyone's back, step by step, waiting for the day she could move me out and take control of everything before Michael even processed what happened. But her arrogance made her sloppy. "Don't worry," she said. "I've already talked to—" A sudden crunch of tires on gravel cut her words short. A car pulled into the driveway. Not a fast arrival, not an angry one, just a familiar one. Michael.
His silver Honda Civic turned into the driveway with a quick jerk of the wheel, the way he always drove when anxious. I stepped out onto the porch just as he parked. He opened the door so quickly it bounced back. "Mom?" he called. His face, pale, worried, still half awake, softened when he saw me. In that moment, he was not a grown man with a mortgage and a stressful marriage. He was my son, my little boy with scraped knees and messy hair. He hurried up the steps. "Are you okay?" he asked, breathless. Before I could answer, Melissa stepped forward, like a shield. "Michael," she said sharply, "don't listen to her. She's confused. The papers are in the folder. We need her to cooperate so we can take her to the facility." Michael stepped back as if she had slapped him. "The facility?" he repeated. "What facility? What are you talking about?" Melissa's mouth tightened. "Look, I told you, she can't live here alone anymore. We talked about this. We said she needed help." Michael's voice dropped to a dangerous softness I had not heard in years. "I never said we should force her out of her home. I never agreed to anything like this." The mover stepped farther away now, sensing something important was about to unfold. Melissa lifted her chin, trying to regain dominance. "This is for her own good," she snapped. "She doesn't know what's best for her anymore." My son turned to look at me, just one look, and he understood everything. "Mom," he said gently, "did you sign anything?" I held up the folder. "No," I said, "and what's inside is forged." Melissa's face twisted. "It's not for—" Michael raised his hand to silence her. And then he said something that cracked the morning open. "Let me see the documents." Melissa froze. "No," she whispered. But it was too late. He reached for the folder in my hand. She tried to stop him. "Michael, don't—" But he pulled it from her grip in one swift motion. Her mask slipped, and for the first time that morning, the truth had nowhere left to hide. Michael stood there, holding the folder Melissa had fought to keep from him. The early morning sun was just beginning to touch the lake, but the cold between them was sharper than the January wind. He opened the folder slowly, as though bracing for something he didn't want to find. Page 1. Property Transfer Agreement, with my forged signature. He stared at the signature for a long moment, his brow furrowed, eyes narrowing with recognition. "Mom," he said quietly, you never write like this." "No," I said, "I don't." Melissa stepped toward him quickly, voice tight and desperate. "Michael, she signed it weeks ago. She forgot. She's been forgetful." He cut her off with a single word. "Enough." Melissa froze. I had not seen my son speak like that since he was a teenager standing up to a bully. He flipped to the next page. Voluntary release of ownership. His eyes drifted to the signature again, then up at me. "You wouldn't even know where to get this form," he whispered. "No," I said softly. "I wouldn't." His jaw clenched so tightly that the muscle twitched under his ear. Then the third document, Assisted Living Placement Authorization. When he saw that one, he inhaled sharply, disbelief thickening in his expression. "Melissa," he said, voice trembling, "what is this?" She stepped forward quickly, speaking too fast. "Michael, she needs care. This house is too much. She fell last year. She can't manage alone." His voice rose, firm and wounded. "That doesn't explain the forgery." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled out of water. She wasn't prepared for him to fight her. She wasn't prepared for him to choose truth over control. Michael tossed the papers back into the folder, shaking his head slowly. I can't believe you did this. Behind my back, behind hers, behind everything. She reached for his arm. Michael, you don't understand. She's manipulating you. She's twisting the story. He pulled his arm away. Actually, he said, voice cold, I think you're the one twisting stories. The movers exchanged looks, but said nothing. Their silence was its own witness to the moment. Melissa's voice cracked. You're taking her side? Over your own wife? Michael looked at her for a long moment, and then he said the words she never expected. I'm taking the side of the person who isn't lying. Silence. You could hear the distant sound of a woodpecker tapping at a tree, a dog barking somewhere across the frozen lake, the steady hum of the moving truck's engine.
But no one said a word. Then I stepped forward, gently placing my hand on Michael's sleeve. There's something else, I said quietly. He turned to me, eyes softening again. I protected the house, I said. 2 months ago. I put it in a trust. Michael exhaled in relief, relief that I had protected myself, relief that I had not been as vulnerable as Melissa believed. Melissa stared at me like I had spoken a different language. A what? She asked. A trust, I repeated. A legally binding arrangement. The property is no longer in my name. Michael nodded slowly, processing. So that means, he said. It means, I answered, even if I had signed these forged papers, which I didn't, they mean nothing. The house cannot be transferred. It cannot be taken. It cannot be touched. Melissa's face drained of color. She stumbled back one step, then another, as though the world had tilted beneath her. That's not fair, she whispered. You tricked me. I stared at her, incredulous. I tricked you? My voice remained calm, but every word carried truth, like a stone skipping across water. You came to my home before sunrise. You forged my name on legal documents. You brought a moving truck to force me out, and you call me unfair? Melissa's eyes darted between us, from my calm face to Michael's devastated one, as if searching for an escape route. You planned this, she said to me. That trust, you planned all this against me. No, I said. I planned it to protect myself. Your actions simply proved I made the right choice. Michael closed the folder, pressing it against his chest as if trying to hold himself together. Then he asked her the question that would change everything. Melissa, did you really think you could move her out without telling me? Her silence was the loudest answer. Michael's face hardened. He said, I can fix a lot of things, but I can't fix this. Her composure cracked. Michael, please don't do this. We talked about this. I told you she wasn't safe here. You didn't tell me you were trying to take her home. You didn't tell me you forged signatures. You didn't tell me you planned this behind my back. Melissa's eyes filled with desperate anger. I was doing it for us, she cried. No, he said, you were doing it for you. He stepped closer to her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. And that, he whispered, is something I can't ignore anymore. She blinked, stunned, because the control she always believed she had over him was falling apart in front of her. Completely, irreversibly, finally. And she felt it, like ice cracking under her feet. When Michael finished looking through the forged documents, he stepped away from Melissa and turned toward the porch railing, gripping it with both hands. His breath came out in small white clouds, but it wasn't from the cold. It was from shock.
He finally looked up at me, eyes wide with the disappointment I knew wasn't directed at me. "Mom," he said quietly, "I should have asked you more questions. I should have seen this coming." "You trusted your wife," I replied gently. "There's nothing wrong with that. The wrong part is what she did with that trust." Behind us, Melissa let out a sharp, frustrated breath. "You're being dramatic," she snapped. "This whole thing is blown out of proportion. She signed the papers, she just doesn't remember." Michael turned to her slowly. "Stop saying that," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it broke something in the air. "She remembers everything because she didn't sign anything." Melissa swallowed hard, realizing she was losing control. "Michael, think about the baby," she said, playing a card she had kept tucked away. "We need stability. We need a bigger place. This house is not yours," he said. "It's not mine. It's not anyone's to take." Her jaw dropped. "I was doing what was necessary for our future." "No," he said firmly. "You were trying to force my mother into a facility without my knowledge. You forged her name. You brought movers. You crossed every line." Melissa's voice cracked with irritation. "Fine. If she wants to make this difficult, let her. But the papers still stand." "They don't," I said quietly. "The house is in a trust. It cannot be transferred. Not by you, not even by me alone." Melissa blinked rapidly, confusion mixing with anger. "You can't just hide that decision like that. That's protection," I replied, "and I did it because of mornings exactly like this one." For the first time, Melissa didn't have a comeback. No clever line, no manipulation, only silence. Michael ran a hand through his hair, a gesture he always did when overwhelmed. "I need the truth," he said, turning to her. "Why did you really come here at 5 a.m? Why the movers? Why now?" Melissa hesitated, and that hesitation gave her away. Because in the stillness of that second, she knew the truth wasn't on her side anymore. "I thought," she whispered, "if everything was already moving, you wouldn't question it." Michael stared at her, stunned. "You wanted to force it. You wanted this to be too late to undo." Melissa's silence was her confession. And in that moment, the final crack appeared, the point where her entire plan began to collapse under its own weight.
Michael stood there, holding the folder like it weighed more than a stack of forged documents, like it carried years of trust, now stolen and twisted. His voice, usually soft and patient, had sharpened into something unfamiliar. "Melissa," he said slowly, "you tried to trap us both." Her eyes darted between us, searching for a weakness to exploit. But for the first time since she arrived, there wasn't one. "No, I was trying to help your mother. You said yourself she needed—" "I never said we should move her out. And I certainly never said we should forge her signature." The movers, who had been standing quietly by the truck, shifted uncomfortably. One crossed his arms. The other looked away as if he didn't want to witness what came next. Melissa's face tightened. "You're believing her over me?" "Yes," he replied, without hesitation. "Because she's the only one who's telling the truth." That answer hit her like a slap. The cold morning seemed to freeze around us. Melissa stepped back, her heels slipping slightly on the frosted porch plank. "You're making a mistake. You don't understand what's at stake." Michael looked at her with an expression I had never seen on him before, a blend of sorrow and clarity. "Tell me," he said, "what exactly is at stake for you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you wanted my mother's home more than you wanted her safe." Melissa opened her mouth, but no words came out. The silence that followed was louder than shouting. I finally spoke, my voice steady. "Melissa, do you know what the trust means?" She didn't answer, so I continued. "It means this house can't be taken. It can't be reassigned. It can't be transferred, not by anyone but me, not even Michael." Her lips parted, but I kept going. "I trusted you. I welcomed you into this family. I hoped you would respect the memories here, the life built here. But today proved you saw this home as an opportunity, not a place of love." Melissa's eyes were wide, almost glossy. "You were in my way," she finally muttered. There it was. The truth she'd been trying to bury under concern, under persuasion, under forged signatures. Michael's shoulders fell. "You don't talk about my mother like that," he quietly said. But Melissa wasn't finished. "You didn't see how she was living," she turned to him. "Alone, isolated, in a house that's falling apart. You'd rather let her stay here and slip and break a hip? Or wander outside and freeze? I was protecting our future." "No," he said sharply. "You were protecting your convenience." Her mouth hung open. "Do you hear yourself?" he continued. "You tried to move her out behind my back. You forged her name. You showed up with movers before dawn. None of that is about safety. That's about control." Melissa's voice cracked. "I had to take charge. You never do. You're always defending her." "And you're always attacking her," he whispered. The truth broke something inside her. She looked around in desperation, at the truck, at the movers, at the snow-covered driveway, as if hoping something would rescue her from the reality unraveling in front of her. Then she pointed at me, anger flooding back in. "This house is a waste. She's old. She can't keep it up. She doesn't even—" Michael stepped between us. "That's enough." She blinked, stunned that he had physically placed himself as a barrier, not beside her, but between us. "You need to leave." "What?" she whispered. "You heard me." Melissa's voice fell to a desperate edge. "You're choosing her over me?" "No," he quietly said. "I'm choosing honesty, respect, and the truth." Melissa shook her head violently. "You can't do this, Michael. I'm your wife. And she's my mother, the woman who raised me, protected me, and now I'm going to protect her."
The words made my chest tighten with emotions I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Melissa's breath hitched. "This isn't fair," she said softly. "You don't know everything." "You're right," he interrupted. "So tell me." Her eyes darted to the folder still in his hand, then to the truck, then to the moving men. And that was the moment I realized she wasn't panicking because she'd been caught. She was panicking because something bigger was behind this, something she didn't want to confess. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely more than a whisper. "You don't understand. I didn't plan this alone." Michael's face drained. "What do you mean?" he asked quietly. Melissa swallowed hard. Her shoulders trembled. "I wasn't supposed to say anything,"
she murmured. "But your cousin told me it was the only way." A chill ran down my spine. "Which cousin?" I asked. Her silence answered for her. The truth wasn't over. The betrayal wasn't over. This scheme wasn't hers alone. And in that moment, I knew. The next part of the story was about to reveal something Michael wasn't prepared to hear, and something I had feared for months.
Melissa's last sentence hung in the frozen morning air like a threat wrapped in guilt. "I didn't plan this alone," she had whispered. And something inside me tightened, because deep down, I had suspected this for months. Michael stared at her, stunned. "What do you mean you didn't plan this alone?" he asked slowly. His voice no longer carried anger. Now it carried dread. Melissa exhaled shakily, eyes darting toward the driveway as if she were trying to find a way to escape her own words. "This wasn't just my idea," she said. "I had help, advice. Someone told me how to handle the papers, how to approach the transfer, how to convince you." Michael stepped closer. "Who?" he demanded. "Who told you to do this?" Melissa swallowed hard. Her throat bobbed visibly. "I wasn't supposed to say anything," she whispered. "He told me not to. He said you would never understand." Michael's eyes narrowed. "He? Which he, Melissa?" Her silence cracked open the truth before she even said it. Michael's voice dropped to a whisper. "Don't tell me it was Aaron!" she blurted out, her voice trembling. The name cut through the moment like a blade. Michael stepped back in disbelief. "Aaron?" he repeated. "My own cousin?" I closed my eyes for a moment, not surprised, only heartbroken, because I had felt something off with Aaron for a long time. A coldness behind his smiles, a distance that didn't exist years ago. Melissa continued quickly, as if the confession had burst out of her all at once. "He told me your mom would never give up the house willingly. He said she was stubborn. He said she'd signed something years ago with your father that wasn't fair. He said this house would eventually come to you and we should secure it now." Michael blinked, stunned. "So Aaron advised you to force my mother out?" "Yes," she cried. "It was the only way. He said once she was in assisted living, we could file." Michael stepped forward so quickly she flinched. "Do you even hear yourself? You let someone outside this family convince you to take away my mother's home? He's not outside the family. He's your cousin." "And he hates me," Michael said calmly. "Ever since we were kids, he hated that Dad trusted me more. He always wanted this house. He always thought Mom would leave it to him someday because his mother didn't get anything from the estate. He was jealous of everything I had." Melissa looked down, but her voice was sharp. "He told me this was the right thing, that you would understand later." Michael stared at her with a pain deeper than anger. "Do you know what Aaron is known for?" he asked. "What?" She frowned. "Manipulating," he said. "Lying. Taking advantage of people who think he cares about them." Her face fell. He continued, voice quiet but furious. "You let him get inside your head? You let him turn you into this? You took his resentment and made it your mission?" "I didn't know," she cried. "I thought he was helping us."
"No," Michael said. "He was using you to hurt me and hurt my mother." Silence swept over the porch again. Heavy, suffocating, final. Melissa's shoulders slumped. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. But there are some moments in life when "I didn't mean to" loses all value. This was one of them. I finally stepped forward. "Melissa," I said softly, "do you know when I first suspected something?" She looked up reluctantly.
It was last month when you asked me if I kept old medical documents. You tried to make it sound innocent, but the question was too specific, too probing. Melissa didn't respond. And when I saw Aaron at Thanksgiving, he wouldn't look me in the eyes, not once. I knew then something was being discussed without me. Michael turned to me in shock. Mom, why didn't you say anything? I smiled sadly. Because you weren't ready to see it, and I didn't want to be the reason you questioned your marriage. He blinked rapidly, guilt washing across his face. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have protected you. No, I said, shaking my head gently. You trusted the wrong person. That is not a failure. That is called love. His eyes softened, but the anger toward Melissa simmered underneath. He turned back to her. You're going to call Aaron, he said quietly. You're going to tell him everything he told you is done, finished. I can't. You will, he said, right now. Melissa hesitated, then pulled out her phone with trembling hands. She stared at the screen, then at Michael, then back at the screen. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Michael's jaw clenched. Tell him the truth, he said, that you got caught. She swallowed hard, pressing the call button with shaky fingers. When the line connected, her voice dropped into a hollow whisper. Aaron, it's over. She put the house in a trust. The transfer won't work, and Michael knows. A long silence followed. Even from where I stood, I could hear Aaron's voice rising angrily on the other end. Melissa's lip trembled. I can't do this anymore. I'm not part of this plan. She ended the call abruptly. Michael took the phone from her gently, almost pityingly. Then he said the final words that sealed the morning. Melissa, go home. Her mouth parted. Michael! Go, he said again. I'll talk to you later, but right now I need to be with my mother. And for the first time since sunrise, Melissa realized she had truly lost. She walked slowly toward the truck, her boots crunching in the snow, each step sounding like a closing chapter. The movers exchanged quiet glances, then climbed into the truck behind her. The engine started, the gears shifted, and the truck rolled away down the long gravel driveway, leaving only Michael and me on the porch, and a truth we both needed to face.
After the moving truck disappeared around the bend, the quiet on the porch settled differently. Not the cold silence of fear, but the gentle stillness of safety returning. Michael stood beside me, still gripping the folder of forged papers as if it were something fragile. His shoulders slowly lowered, the tension he carried for months finally starting to release. He turned to me with eyes full of regret. "Mom," he said softly, "I'm so sorry. I should have seen the signs. I should have protected you." I reached out and touched his hand. "No," I said gently. "You came when I needed you. That's what matters." He exhaled, the breath shaky. "You didn't deserve any of this." I smiled sadly. Life doesn't always give us what we deserve. It gives us what we must learn.
We both stood there, watching the last traces of tire marks fade from the snow-covered gravel. Michael finally found his voice again. "Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner? About the trust, or about Melissa's behavior?" I looked out toward the frozen lake, its surface glistening under the pale morning sunlight. "Because," I said quietly, "because I didn't want to become a burden." He inhaled sharply, pain flickering across his face. "You could never be a burden to me." I turned to him, squeezing his hand. "Love doesn't make someone a burden, Michael. But dependence can make relationships complicated. I didn't want to pit you against your wife, not unless it was necessary." "And today," he said, voice low, "it became necessary." I nodded. Yes. Today was the day truth needed to walk through the door. We walked inside together. The house felt warmer, as if the walls themselves were relieved that chaos was finally gone. Michael sat at the kitchen table, holding the forged documents. He studied them the way you examine a betrayal you never expected, slowly, painfully, piece by piece. He said, "I trusted her. I know. And she used that trust against us." "Yes." He looked up, eyes wet but steady. "Mom, what do I do now?" I took a deep breath, a deep, calming breath that felt like years of learned wisdom. "You move forward," I said, "but you don't move blindly anymore." He nodded, wiping the side of his face. "I can't believe Aaron was part of this." I sighed. "Some people will betray you for money, others for pride, but the ones who betray you for ownership are the most dangerous." Michael placed the folder down. He said, "I need to talk to her, not to fight, to understand why she did this." I said, "That's your decision, but make sure you talk when anger has cooled, not when your heart is burning." He nodded slowly. "And you?" he asked. "What will you do now?" I looked around my home. The photographs, the curtains I sewed, the worn wooden floors, the smell of the cinnamon tea I brewed every winter. This house held decades of memories. Loss, love, life.
"I will live," I said simply, "as I always have." Michael smiled gently, the first genuine smile of the morning. "I'll check on you every day. Please, let me be part of your life again." I leaned my forehead against his gently, the way I used to when he was a child and couldn't sleep after a nightmare. "You never left my life," I whispered. "You just got lost in someone else's shadow." He closed his eyes, breathing shakily. "Mom, I love you. I love you too, Michael." We stayed like that for a moment, mother and son, standing in a house that had survived storms far greater than this one. He helped me make tea, sitting with me for another hour before leaving to face a different storm waiting at home. When the door finally closed and I was alone again, I sat in the quiet and let the morning sink deep into my bones. I looked at the trust papers tucked safely in the drawer, at Daniel's old letter, at the life I still owned,
Not just the house, but my independence, my dignity, my choices. And I realized something. Something I hope every senior listening to my story will remember. You are allowed to protect your life. You are allowed to defend your peace. You are allowed to draw the line, even with family. Just because we grow older does not mean we become less valuable. And just because someone calls themselves family does not automatically have your best interests at heart. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can say is this: "This is my life, and I choose what happens next." That morning, I chose my truth, my home, my safety, my voice. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free.